There's a type of person who walks into a room and already knows something is wrong before anyone says a word. The smile arrived half a second too late. The laugh stopped just before it should have. The silence lasted one beat too long. They didn't look for any of this. They simply couldn't stop seeing it. From the outside, this looks like a gift. Extraordinary emotional intelligence. The ability to read any room, any person, any situation. But the people who actually live with it would describe it very differently. It doesn't feel like a superpower. It feels like being permanently tuned to a frequency the rest of the world decided to block out, full of noise that never fully quiets down. Because this ability, the one that makes them brilliant at reading people, quietly becomes one of the most psychologically damaging things they carry. Today, we break down the psychology of hyperperceptive minds, where it comes from, the 3 traps that silently consume them, and the 3 principles that can finally set them free. Welcome back. Let's get into it. First, let's take the mysticism off the table. Hyperperceptive people are often called gifted or deeply intuitive, as if what they do is some kind of sixth sense, or they're dismissed as oversensitive, anxious, overthinking everything. Neither is accurate. What's actually happening is called thin slicing, the brain forming accurate judgments from just seconds of exposure to another person's behavior. For hyperperceptive individuals, it runs constantly and automatically, whether they want it to or not. Layered on top of that is what Dr. Paul Ekman spent decades studying micro-expressions, involuntary flickers of emotion lasting 1/25th of a second. Flashes most people never register. Hyperperceptive minds catch them the way a musician hears a single note slightly off key in an otherwise perfect performance. Here's how to picture it. Most people experience a conversation like a cinema audience watching a film. They follow the plot, take the dialogue at face value, and walk out with the impression the director intended. Hyperperceptive minds work like the sound engineer in the mixing booth. While everyone else hears the finished song, they hear every isolated track underneath it. The tension in the vocal, the undercurrent that suggests something is structurally wrong. That detection is powerful, but it silently pulls these people into 3 very specific traps. Trap 1. The truth teller. Nobody wants. In Greek mythology, Cassandra was given the gift of perfect foresight, then cursed so that no one would ever believe her. She saw exactly what was coming, warned everyone, and watched it happen anyway. Hyperperceptive people don't see the future, but they understand something most people quietly agree to ignore. Human social life runs on comfortable fictions. We say I'm fine when we're not. We applaud presentations we found mediocre. We perform enthusiasm we don't fully feel. Most people participate in this naturally. It's the social glue that holds things together. Hyperperceptive people are a structural threat to that glue. Not because they say anything, but because their presence makes illusions difficult to sustain. A pause that lasts a half beat too long. An expression that doesn't match the room's mood. And in group dynamics, quiet skepticism towards someone everyone else validates reads as aggression, even when nothing has been said. The backlash works through social reframing. They become difficult to read. Too serious. Cold. Lacking team spirit. Psychology calls this ego-protective aggression. When someone senses their self-presentation isn't working on a particular person, it's far easier to reframe the perceptive person as the problem than to sit with the discomfort of being seen. So they learn to go quiet. But going quiet doesn't make what they've noticed disappear. It just means they carry it alone. Their clarity makes others feel exposed, and people who feel exposed don't ask why. They push back. Trap 2. The mind that cannot stand down. There's a threshold where perception stops being a tool and becomes a compulsion. When their clarity has made them a target enough times, the brain adapts. It stops treating social interactions as neutral until proven otherwise. It begins treating them as suspect until proven safe. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, a mode of elevated alertness originally evolved for survival in genuinely threatening environments. For these individuals, it becomes the default operating mode, even in completely safe situations. The hidden cost. Hypervigilance turns the mind into a confirmation engine. A partner who hasn't replied in 2 hours is probably just busy. But inside a hypervigilant mind, that silence becomes a data point in a pattern, the early signal of growing distance, the first symptom of an ending that hasn't happened yet. This cognitive loop, rumination, produces a specific kind of exhaustion, not the tiredness of doing too much, the tiredness of never being able to stop. And the cruelty, the same intelligence that makes them perceptive, also makes them exceptionally good at building worst-case scenarios. They can construct a convincing case for almost any reading of a situation. And once it's built, it's very hard to unknow. They don't stop trusting people all at once. They stop slowly, one unanswered message at a time. Trap 3. The weight of what cannot be said. There is a kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. It's the loneliness of understanding something completely and clearly that you cannot share without causing harm, or without being dismissed, or without proving the exact point that makes people uncomfortable around you. Over time, they become the unofficial emotional container of every group they belong to. They're the person others instinctively turn to, the one who always knows what to say, who makes others feel genuinely understood. But the cost no one sees understanding everyone else's interior world requires constant, invisible expenditure. Psychology calls the breaking point empathic overload, when the capacity to feel with others crosses from connection into absorption. A friend's grief sits in their chest for days. A stranger's anxiety raises their heart rate. They become a container for other people's emotional reality. And very few people ever think to ask what they themselves are carrying. And on top of that weight sits a second layer, the observations too accurate to say out loud, the truths that, if spoken, would make the room go cold. The longer they carry both weights simultaneously, the quieter they become, not out of indifference, out of exhaustion. Their silence is not emptiness. It is the accumulated weight of everything they have chosen, again and again, not to say. So what is the way out for a mind that cannot stop seeing the truth? The answer is not to see less. That ability doesn't switch off. And trying to suppress it only adds another layer of exhaustion. The real answer is this. The goal is not to change what they see. It is to change what they feel obligated to do with it. In therapeutic psychology, this requires 3 core principles. Principle 1. Separate observation from obligation. Seeing something clearly does not mean you are responsible for it. They notice the insecurity underneath a coworker's confidence. They read the unresolved grief driving a partner's irritability. And almost automatically, they feel pulled to fix it, to name it, to carry it until something changes. The first principle, the act of seeing, is already complete in itself. They can notice the fear underneath someone's anger without being required to address it. The observation does not create a debt. Think of perception as a window. You can look through a window without stepping through it. The view is information. What they do with that information is always a choice, even when it doesn't feel like one. Principle 2. Apply depth to motivation, not just behavior. One of the quietest forms of suffering is watching someone behave badly, knowing exactly what wound is driving it, and feeling a frustration they can't explain to anyone around them. The second principle directs that same depth toward understanding why, not just what. Almost all difficult human behavior is an attempt to protect something fragile. The colleague who deflects credit fears being found inadequate. The partner who withdraws fears abandonment. This doesn't excuse the behavior, but it shifts the emotional response from frustration toward something closer to grounded compassion. The kind that says, I understand what's driving this, and I can decide how much of my energy this deserves. Think of a doctor who understands a patient's pain completely and still goes home without carrying it in their chest. Understanding becomes information, not inheritance. Principle 3. Practice deliberate presence. Hyper-perceptive people spend enormous time living anywhere but now, replaying the past, modeling the future, preparing for outcomes that haven't arrived and may never come. The present moment is often the place they spend the least time. Deliberate presence is the practice of choosing, repeatedly and consciously, to return to what is actually happening, not what might be happening underneath it. Their awareness is a light. For most of their lives, it has been a sharp laser, narrow, intense, exposing every flaw in every surface. Deliberate presence slowly widens that beam. Same energy, diffused, warm rather than surgical. Still bright enough to understand, gentle enough finally to rest. When these three principles become habits, something remarkable begins to happen. Their awareness doesn't disappear. It matures. They still see deeply. They still notice what others walk past. But they are no longer pulled into every current they detect, no longer obligated to fix what they observe or to carry what doesn't belong to them. They move from using their perception to predict, to stay ahead of pain they can already see arriving, to using it to simply be present. They are no longer a laser exposing every flaw in the surface. They become a candle, still bright enough to see by, warm enough to sit close to, gentle enough finally to illuminate themselves as well. This kind of awareness is not a burden. It never was. If you see yourself in any of these three traps today, you are not alone, and you are not broken. Tell me in the comments which trap resonates most with you. The truth teller nobody wants, the mind that cannot stand down, or the weight of what cannot be said. If this gave you something to think about, hit like and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.